So, good morning, everyone. Nice of you to all swim out this morning and join us here at the Globe for our annual public meeting. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Susan Sullivan, and I'm brand new at this, not a month yet, and they got me working already. But so happy to be here and absolutely delighted to have this position. Before I start, though, I want to do something that's really important to me, and that is that I'd like to acknowledge my predecessor, Gene Hedges. I'm sure most of you know Gene, but in any case, I want to tell you about his time here on the board. Gene served 9 years, which is the full term. That's as much as you can serve on the GIAA board. That included 2 years as chairperson, and those who worked with Gene know the quality of his leadership. He was steady, he was thoughtful, he was principled, and so deeply committed to good governance. He taught me a lot. He never sought the spotlight, ever, but he always did the work. He asked good questions, tough questions sometimes. He supported management, Reg and Tony, so much. He respected the role of the board, and he really did do a good job on teaching everyone around him what the role of the board is. And he always, always kept the airport's best interests out in full view. So, Gene, I want to thank you so much. He's here with us this morning. He's back there being quiet and out of the way again. But your contribution has been top shelf, and we owe you a sincere thanks for all you did over the 9 years. I also want to acknowledge that there are several of our board members here today. I saw Bruce Terrace come in. I saw Peggy Bartlett come in. Dave Peddle is down here in the front. Am I missing anybody? Oh, Susan, I didn't see you come in. You snuck by me. Susan Hearn is here as well. And Hannah DeYoung is here? Great. Hannah is newly minted here and just new with us. So thank you all, though, for coming and for being part of this event with us this morning. So Gander International Airport has always represented far more than a physical structure. I don't have to tell anyone here that. It's a beloved public asset, a vital link to the rest of the province, the country and the world, in fact. And it's a tangible reflection of Central Newfoundland's belief in its future. For nearly a century, Gander International Airport has connected this region to the world. No small feat, is it? It has served passengers, supported industry, welcomed visitors, enabled trade, responded in times of crises, and carried a national aviation story unique to Canada. And that legacy matters. But stewardship is not about looking backward. We believe it is about making sure that this airport remains strong, relevant, and ready for what is to come. As I reflect on 2025, I do so with gratitude. It's a privilege to work with a board whose directors understand and appreciate the responsibility and mandate entrusted to them. Similarly, we are fortunate to be managed by a leadership team, Reg and Tony in particular, who guide this organization with steady judgment and unwavering commitment every moment of every day. And we're equally blessed to have a complement of employees, tenants, partners, and service providers whose dedication and professionalism ensure YQX continues to operate safely and efficiently. The results of 2025 show meaningful progress, we're happy to tell you. Passenger traffic showed modest improvement. Our financial position strengthened significantly. Major projects advanced. The authority continued to invest in infrastructure, terminal improvements, and the airport's long-term potential. Those are all encouraging signs. But the board's role is not to take comfort from one good year or to treat recovery as complete before the work is finished. Gander still faces real structural challenges. Off-season connectivity remains weak. Seat capacity remains constrained. Costs continue to rise, and if we look at what's happening geopolitically, I suspect costs may continue to rise. Infrastructure needs are significant, and small airports across the country are operating in an aviation environment that has changed dramatically since 2019. So the board's responsibility is to maintain a forward-looking perspective that focuses on the big picture. Good governance takes work. It requires principle, renewal, honest reflection, and a willingness to keep testing whether the organization is focused on the right questions. During this year, the board continued to strengthen its commitment and its committee work to clarify its priorities and maintain a strong focus on risk, accountability, and long-term sustainability. We also made board renewal and recruitment a priority this year. The authority has been strengthened by a roster of directors who contribute diverse professional backgrounds, measured decision-making, and a deep understanding of the communities we serve, which is so important. That all matters because the decisions before the airport are becoming more complex. Gander's future is not tied to one line of business. It depends on a mix of passenger service, cargo growth, land and property development, tourism, heritage, aerospace, emergency preparedness, and strategic opportunities linked to our location in the North Atlantic. And that's certainly something we're keeping our eye on. The board's role is to make sure those opportunities are pursued carefully with discipline and in a way that protects the authority's core responsibilities. It's about pursuing the right opportunities for the right reasons, in the right way, at the right time. We are also mindful that this airport is a public asset. It must be managed with transparency, accountability, and a strong sense of duty to the region. And those aren't just words for us. Those form part of our mandate. The people of Central Newfoundland have a deep connection to this airport. They understand its history, but they also understand its practical importance. It's how people get home. It's how businesses connect to markets. It's how visitors arrive. It's how the region stays connected to the country and the world. This is why air service remains such a critical issue. Limited capacity and poor schedule utility do not simply affect passenger numbers. They affect quality of life, too. Business confidence, tourism, investment, and this region's ability to compete. The board fully supports management's continued focus on air service development and advocacy. And let me assure you, Reg and Tony in particular are at that all the time. This is not a matter of convenience. It's a matter of regional access and economic opportunity. At the same time, we recognize that progress has been made. The authority has strengthened its financial position. It has continued to manage cost pressures carefully. It has ensured safe and reliable operations, and it has kept its focus on the strategic opportunities that can make YQX more resilient in the years to come. That combination, discipline today and ambition for tomorrow, is exactly what this airport needs. On behalf of the board, I want to thank our management team and my fellow directors for their service, judgment, and dedication to strong governance. And I want to acknowledge our airport employees, tenants, airline partners, government partners, community stakeholders, the International Lounge Foundation, all of you, for the unique roles that each of you play in supporting this airport. Gander International Airport has always had a larger purpose. It was built for connection. It was shaped by history, and it remains essential to Central Newfoundland's future. The progress made in 2025 gives us reason for confidence, but it also reminds us that stewardship is an ongoing responsibility. The board remains committed to that responsibility and to ensuring this airport is governed with care, discipline, and belief in the region it serves. Now, having said all of that, I'm going to turn things over to Reg, who will walk us through the details of this year's performance and the priorities ahead. And then we'll take a look to see if you have any questions or comments at the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks to all of you for being here today. I think you either care or you're curious, and I'm happy with both. It's great to see such a good turnout. Those of you who sat through my especially thrilling speech at last year's AGM might remember we had a long conversation about The Shawshank Redemption, one of my favorite movies, and I used this as an analogy for how we had recovered post-COVID. And I said last year, even though we were crawling through a long tunnel, we had seen the light at the end. And I think the difference in 2025 is that I think we're fully out of the tunnel, we got a fresh change of clothes, and the rain is on our face. So the story of 2025 was really, for this airport, about recovery becoming real. Financially, the improvement was pretty significant. Revenue reached $10.4 million, up from $8.6 million the year before. We managed to hold expenses, core expenses were below inflation, even though Garrett's attending to an interruption, even though operations never sleeps. Even though inflation wasn't that high this year. So most importantly, and I think the bottom line is that we moved from a deficit of $728,000 in 2024 to a surplus of about $883,000 in 2025. So if you look at that in all, it's a positive swing of about $1.6 million. So that doesn't mean the airport's suddenly flush. The old saying, we got 99 problems, but being rich ain't one. But it does mean the model is improving, and it means our discipline is truly paying off. It means the organization is moving in the right direction after several very difficult years. Passenger traffic also grew. We saw 5% growth year over year, and behind a continually strengthening tourism product, last summer was up 20%. That was helpful in part because we had larger gauge aircraft on mainland markets to Toronto. And in fact, for this summer schedule, the Toronto flight will be operated by 189-seat Boeing. So the airlines are showing a lot of confidence in our ability to move people in the summer. So it proves a point, too, and one that I feel like I've belabored for the last half decade, is that when schedules are useful and seat capacity is there, the product works. And this market here in Central Newfoundland responds. But the other side is the truth that's just as important, and the one we can't ignore, this is the one we're truly seized with, is that off-peak air access remains a major challenge. So fall, winter, shoulder season connectivity, still too thin. Too much of our market is still forced into inconvenient schedules, sometimes higher airfares, and leakage to other airports. We track the amount of visitors to and residents of Central Newfoundland through new technology on where they fly from. And I'm getting a report concluded that I'll be sharing with our partners in the next few weeks. And I think right now it's about, if you live in Central proper and Gander airport's your closest, about 59% will travel through their local airport. So you can understand what the 40% that bleed or divert to other airports means to our operation. So this hurts families, it hurts business travel, it hurts tourism, it hurts recruitment, it hurts the region, and yes, it does hurt the airport itself, because the gap between where we were pre-COVID and where we are this year accounts for about $1 million in revenue. So you can see, looking at our bottom line, at an airport that needs about $2 million in profit a year to replenish safety-related capital, that's sort of the missing link, even though we're edging toward it. In 2025, rent revenue approached 2 million, so that's about a 6.5% increase. Concessions, rentals, and related revenue accounted for about a third of what the airport took in from the revenue side. This is not a side story. This is about resilience. Every good lease, every practical land arrangement, every partner we bring into airport property helps diversify the business. And this matters because airports with broader revenue bases are better able to invest, manage downturns, and we're an industry that has frequent downturns, and support the communities they serve. So land development is not separate from our aviation mission. It supports it, and it helps pay for it. International technical stop traffic, part of Gander's DNA, also strengthened. Last year, every metric was up, ranging from 50 to 20%, 20 to 50%, I should say. So that business is part of what we do in the fabric of our airport, and it reflects the airport's continuing value as a North American operating platform, not only for passengers, but for cargo, ferry flights, military movements, and irregular operations. We also advanced some important infrastructure opportunities. The live seafood storage facility continued to move from concept to construction, so it's a complicated project. It hasn't been without its pressure. But the reason it matters is quite simple. Gander has a real opportunity to play a larger role in exporting high-value, time-sensitive seafood products in a fast-changing global environment. The shifting winds of tariffs have created a new opportunity and a new realignment of traditional trade routes, and I do think we're at a very opportune time. It's not so much about lining up the ducks right now as lining up the lobster. And we did have successful zero mortality trial flights of premium lobster to Madrid that helped advance the concept. No lobster died in the shipping of these products, and we were pretty happy to see that. It really proved that the cold chain was there, even in advance of the facility being open. So we think this could be a repeatable business line and something that could be transformative for the airport. We also continue work to improve the passenger visitor experience. The Sense of Arrival project that we undertook may not be the biggest capital item on the spreadsheet, but it matters. Our manager, Garrett Watton, did a great job of quarterbacking that. You know, airports are gateways. They tell people where they are. They create a first impression, and for residents, they should create pride. For visitors, they should create a sense of the fact they've arrived somewhere distinct. And after years of contending with passenger feedback forms that liken the baggage hall to something from a Stephen King novel or a prison intake area, it's nice to get a beautiful refreshment of that space. And we also had an opportunity to reconfigure groundside access, improve accessibility, and strengthen IT. Because if anything matters to people at an airport, it's the speed of the Wi-Fi, above all. So thank you to our federal and provincial partners who were involved in both the Sense of Arrival and the cargo project. We're really grateful for your investment. So throughout that year, we plowed probably 5.5 million into infrastructure renewal. The other investments were around fleet renewal and some enhancements in building energy systems in the terminal. So this is what we're trying to do, trying to make the airport look better, work better, and represent the region and the province better. I don't really like to talk, the problem with these AGMs is they're so far into the calendar year that you feel like you're looking quite far back into a distant future. It's important we tell you what happened, but I'm really more seized with what's going to happen and what's happening. So what has 2026 been like so far? It's an understatement, but the operating environment this winter did not give us a gentle start. I think we went from 24-25, where there was not a single snow day at school, to Snowmageddon, we'll call it. It was relentless. Snow, wind, ice, repeated weather events. So that puts pressure on operations, and it also spikes cost. I'm sure the town of Gander and other partners dealt with the same thing. So it's about $300,000 extra to contend with that kind of winter, which, let's hope, is not the benchmark going forward. But I did want to thank our team here, our operational team under Corey Winter's command. They show a lot of resilience. We have a pretty expert crew here. Our operability and airfield maintenance was really strong through the winter, so we were really happy with that. And the other thing I think you'll see, and it may be publicly visible to those of you who live and work in the communities, there's this, a largely unprecedented spike in NATO-related activity due to hostilities in the Middle East. I think we had 300 NATO tails in about 60 days. So people understand that's about 4 times what we'd get in a traditional steady state year. So, for decades, this airport has been a place where civil aviation and military aviation, emergency response, and international operations intersect. So that role is becoming more relevant, not less. The world around us is certainly changing. North Atlantic matters again. Aerospace matters. Search and rescue matters. Maritime surveillance matters. Defense readiness matters. And critical infrastructure matters. And there's now a national conversation about NATO commitments and defense investments, supply chains, and dual-use infrastructure are becoming more important. And I firmly believe that Gander has a legitimate place in those conversations. Many of you have seen these much-needed investments to catch up our military and address some of the bow waves of things that built with an organization that's been tasked, facing scarcity in terms of resources for so long. And there's $1 billion gone into CFP Goose Bay for horizontal and built assets, which is fantastic. And it's great to hear the Premier say he's going to champion Newfoundland and Labrador as a place for future NATO investments. But our next major strategic opportunity here is to renew and strengthen that airport's role as a dual-use North Atlantic aviation platform. And it's funny because if you talk about now NATO movements and allied movements in Canada, Gander goes about its business very quietly, but that doesn't change the fact that we do more military tails and more NATO tails than anywhere east of Ottawa. This is where it happens, more than pure bases. So NATO allies continue to choose us for reasons strategic, and we need to start thinking about how do we align the airport with the needs of those users, because uncertainty is the only certainty going forward. So the point is to match the assets we have to the moment. We have the location, the outsized runway infrastructure, the operating history, the allied activity. So what's needed now is really infrastructure renewal. And we have a country that is completely rethinking defense, sovereignty, Arctic and North Atlantic security, and what infrastructure practically is required to support it. So I've been doing a lot of work behind the scenes with our partners and military leadership, trying to make sure Gander is part of that conversation. Not as nostalgia or some international beacon of kindness, but as a working airport with a serious role to play. So where does that leave us? It leaves us in a much better position than we were a year ago. The financial position is improving, but we still need sustainable operating strength. Passenger traffic is growing modestly, but off-peak service remains a structural weakness. Cargo is progressing, but it must become a repeatable business. Military and NATO activity is also increasing, but we need the infrastructure and partnerships to properly support that role. That's the work ahead. And I think we should feel confident about it, not because the work is easy, but because the year behind us showed that this airport can still move and evolve. It can still adapt, it can still grow, and it still very much matters in ways that reach far beyond the terminal building. So I want to end any airport speech where it should begin, really, with the people who make the place work. So to our employees, a big thank you. Airports don't run on slogans. They run on coffee and a lot of hard work that most people never see. In winter, in weather, in the middle of the night, and under pressure. Thanks to the team for keeping this airport safe, reliable, and ready. And to our tenants and the airlines and the contractors and emergency responders, service providers, government partners, and community partners, and the traveling public, thank you as well. The airport is not one organization acting alone. It is an operating ecosystem. When it works, it is because many people and organizations are pulling in the same direction. So quickly back to Shawshank, and I'll retire this, you'll never have to talk about that movie again. So we're not quite on the beach in Mexico with Morgan Freeman yet, living our happily ever after, but we are no longer wondering if there's daylight ahead. We can see it, we're standing in it, now the job is to make recovery more durable and repeatable. Thank you. I guess, Madam Chair, we could invite any questions or comments from the group. Anyone? Yes, sir?
Well, I've got one. I was one of those central residents that you had mentioned that sometimes goes elsewhere, that 40% that disappears.
Mm-hmm.
This year, with the Cuba flights that disappeared, I guess Sunwing put things on from Mexico. I was actually booked to leave from St. John's. I got to leave from Gander. Loved it. It's all good.
Yeah.
Was that a one-off, or do you expect that might be able to continue?
Yeah, I was really happy to see Sunwing WestJet sort of swap in a new destination. And to be honest with you, we had looked for direct service to Mexico for some times. Is it repeatable? That's part of the conversations I'm going to have next month. I certainly think, and as someone who's gone to Cuba and loves Cuba, I do think it probably needs an opportunity just to get repositioned. And one of the problems with these sun destinations is there can be political volatility, and Jamaica's gone through the same thing. But you could count me as a supporter for a continued service to Mexico directly from here. Anyone else? Quiet bunch, or are you full of popcorn? No? All right.
Very quiet group.
Yes.
Oh, I have one more question.
Yeah, sure.
Someone else wants to. This is not quite so fun, with the aviation fuel shortage that's been talked about, with Gander, because is Gander somewhat isolated or insulated due to like the military and NATO refueling from that when you're talking about, shortages? Or does Gander still have the same challenge on the even playing field with everyone else, and you have to fight for every gallon of fuel you get?
I feel like you're tapping my anxieties here with very, very specific and good questions. So yeah, in the outreach, currently there's 3 refueling providers on the field and a pretty sizable inventory. So our ops team is doing sort of bi-weekly checks on inventory, and their expression to us, without getting into the whole supply chain, is that they shouldn't worry because there's an enormous amount of jet fuel being pumped here lately. And we all know the supply chain is quite erratic right now, but they continue to assure us that it's not an issue. Of course, nothing's a problem until it's a problem, but we certainly haven't seen that yet. And they do seem to be thinking strategically about how long this demand will sustain and what disruptions are in the supply chain. Anything else? Did anyone have any air service questions? I think we come here as an organization, and one of the things that's important is we do need to convey our financial position and some of the good things. But I understand, and my board understands, and my team understands that the metric that matters most to people is schedule, pricing. I mean, people want utility out of their local airport, and I think when we talk about the fact that we're only capturing about 60%, I fully understand that perspective. So if I'm living in Hairy Neck or Hare Bay or anywhere like that, Gander Airport to me is going to mean mostly it's the utility of how does this meet my travel needs. I will say, I'm pleased with how Air Canada in particular has made sizable investments in bigger gauge airplanes in the summer. I think they're showing a lot of confidence in the summer, but again, once you clip Halloween, that schedule utility really drops off, and it's hard. I travel myself, business and pleasure. I know how hard it is. We're doing everything within our power that we can to influence these decisions. I thought I'd stand here today with a couple good news things, but that hasn't materialized as of yet. One thing I can tell you is I do feel like the airlines that are interested see it as a strong investment, a solid business case. It's all about trying to crew flights, scheduling, and scarcity of aircraft, which means we can take that however we want. Understand that that means we're low on the priority list, but we are not fighting a battle where they don't think these winter routes will be unprofitable. Okay, yeah.
Not a question, but a compliment. Bettina Ford, MHA Gander District. I just wanted to give a shout out to the Airport Authority and to the town of Gander. The Gander Connect event that you all collaborated on and held in St. John's, and I know as chair all of the engagements that you had with government departments. Not a week has gone past since that someone doesn't stop me to say, I met someone at that event and made a valuable work-related connection. So just kudos, because I know that's not like the splashy kind of thing that you put out in the public really, but in these walls, I think it's really something for the airport and the town to celebrate. That was really well done.
Oh, I appreciate that. I'm really glad you made the time to attend there too. I would say that for those of you who don't know what the MHA is talking about, we had the town of Gander and the airport jointly went. There's been a lot of government change at all levels over the last couple of years. So really, our government relations roadmap that we work to advocate for the community in the airport had to change, and that includes building rapport and trust with new leaders that we may not have dealt with in the past. So we had 2 days of meetings, and then we had a big social. I think we had about 80, 90 people turn out in St. John's, which brought together the Gander business community leaders with St. John's leaders, with some people from Gander who now reside there. And yeah, there was a lot of, the exchanges between people were very meaningful. Now, it's not certainly something we would do every year, but I think it gave a lot of visibility to what we are. And we're really working in lockstep now with the town of Gander. One of the things I didn't note, but we did conclude a new 10-year shared services agreement, which I think is great. Senior leadership works really well together. We're collaborating all kinds of files. Relationship with council's really healthy, I think, and that doesn't mean they don't ask tough questions, but it does feel like a team approach, and that extends to the regional partners too. So we're grateful for that. Thanks. Yep, Barry?
I don't want to sound like a broken record. Barry Warren, really struck me. But I wanted to share this experience that we had coming out of Florida during Easter. I mentioned to Tony earlier, and maybe it's something that you could use in future conversations. There were 7 of us down for vacation. Anyway, our flight got canceled, and at the last minute, so you get the text that says, okay, we'll reach out to you within the hour. And without getting into a long story, this was something on Thursday. We couldn't get home till Sunday.
Yeah.
Because of, that was, and I we spoke to the agent, ran into, it was a lovely lady that spoke to us, and in going through this, I had said to her, look, we've got the time to make it and catch a flight out of Fort Lauderdale. We're at Orlando. Is that an option? And anyway, we talked that through. Time wasn't there. There was another flight later out of Miami, and I was prepared to drive there, but then what they said was, you'll be stuck in Montreal for 2 or 3 days. You won't be able to get into Gander until Sunday. Anyway, in part of that frustration, I just said, look, can you get us into St. John's and into Deer Lake? And she said, yes, we can do that. And we expressed, I guess, our frustration with that. And she said, can you explain to me, and that was her comment to us, can you explain to me why there's an overcapacity in St. John's, Deer Lake? And because you're expressing your frustration, and we're getting this, day in, day out. She went to get because I just said to her, look, if there's any way possible, I'd like to get them. What have I got to do? She got a supervisor, and the supervisor came on the line and expressed the same frustration, right? And so, even to a point of asking us, do you have the solution to that? I said, well, I don't have the solution. I mean, you got to talk to your bosses on that one.
Right.
But, there is a great demand here. And it's whether it's business travel, it's, I had a situation again yesterday. We talked about this last year at the meeting. I had 2 vice presidents come in from Montreal. They flew into St. John's, drove out yesterday for a 2.5-hour meeting, stayed last night here in Gander, drove back to St. John's, and they're flying out this afternoon because they just couldn't get in there. Got the same thing coming up in the same individual, what I mentioned last year, in June the 11th and 12th, can't get into Gander. And so we've moved our 2 days of meetings into our terminal in St. John's.
Yeah.
So that, it's a business opportunity, that's a growth opportunity that presents several millions of dollars and 10 employees for work throughout Newfoundland. So that hasn't changed. I know I talked to you on the rant about these things, but have we made any progress with Air Canada? Have we talked to Porter? I know what our experience has been down through the years with WestJet.
Yeah.
But are we looking outside the box? And you know, you talk about the new reality, what's taking place in the world. And like I said, from the business community, what's happening with Newfound Gold, other economic spin-offs that's happening in this region. And you know, to me, you know, as a business person, when I sit down and make a business case for purchasing a new tractor at $300,000 or whatever, then, you know, somewhere in Air Canada's organization, there's got to be individuals that understand these numbers
Mm-hmm.
and I hate to think it's an incident where they're just turning around and saying, well, we just want to divert everybody to either Deer Lake or to St. John's anyway. So, anyway.
Yeah, all great points, which I've lived and continue to live. When you have a single daily afternoon flight in the off season that flies full, the fragility of the system falls apart. There's no redundancy if you should bust a connection or if weather turns on you. You said 4 days, I've had 6. The easy solution, I had to be very careful what I say here, given that the easy solution is often that the CSR will say, we can get you to a neighboring airport, but you're on your own. And that's what most people do at their own personal costs, including a rental car. So there's a recognition among airlines that the market is underserved, that the winter schedule is wholly inadequate. We are the only Air Canada station in Atlantic Canada that doesn't have a morning flight. And the morning flight really mops up all that and gives you. So I feel like I'm not throwing, Air Canada's been a good partner. You'll see their investment in the summer. They're trying to crack the code of the winter, and I think it becomes more of a crewing issue than it is a business issue. And I've heard that for a long time. So I don't know what fundamentals are going to change that are going to make that different, especially when they say that the critical pilot shortage is not going to be solved until 2030. But one thing we need to be honest with ourselves about in all that is that, we're not a priority. If we were a priority, we would have seen these things addressed. Something would shift from somewhere else. So that's really frustrating. And the other point you made, which I'll echo, is usually the air service in any given market or region is a product of economic activity. So if you look where we're to now with the growth in aquaculture production along the aquaculture corridor, we don't even speak about a nascent mining activity. Tourism has certainly strengthened and showing a lot of teeth. More seats in post-secondary education here. A more mobile workforce, including people coming into work. All those things contributed should lend itself to more capacity, better choice, better fares. And it hasn't happened. And you said you apologized for saying the same thing last year. I've been saying the same thing for 5 years. And I can tell you the strategy is there are airlines with operating certificates we're having mature conversations with. Some of them, their strategy doesn't align. That's a complex thing I probably shouldn't talk about here. Some seem to be on the cusp of improvements. So I do have to believe that it is going to improve. I'm hoping it will improve November 1st of this year. But it may be, at some point it has to come in. Our approach is around data, compelling business cases, $500,000 in operating concessions to de-risk it, including the airport's own money. The province has been very supportive. Our MHA has been very supportive. Our MP just met with Air Canada. The Chamber's been outstanding, including actually getting specific data of value to the airports. So I can't ask any more partners. I have to do the heavy lifting, but I feel like our community region has been good at nudging it along where it can. So sometimes effort and results are not one and the same. If you see me out jogging, don't laugh because I'm fat. We are trying. It is priority 1 through 10. In fact, I think it's the last thing to crack with this airport. If you look at our 2025 performance, what's missing is that it's a single, perhaps non-daily flight that leaves here at 6 and arrives at midnight. That's going to mop up all that demand. It's going to create stronger network access. It's going to let commuting workers get to Western Market same day. That's it. I don't feel like that's a big ask, but it just hasn't happened. And there's a lot of blue chip employers in the town of Gander. I'll include among them, CFB, Nav Canada, these people who are they're asking the employees to go on the road and spend the bulk of their money at Toronto hotels in transit. I had to do it. I made the mistake of accepting a speaking engagement in San Jose and killed a week. Killed a week I don't have because I overnighted in Toronto on the way down, on the way back, and I didn't fly into San Jose, which is a secondary market. That's San Francisco, which is a fairly sizable one. So it's immensely frustrating. It's frustrating for me, and I think the entire team, not to come here in front of you with some of these better news services, because a lot of it, so it seems to, I don't know if it defies logic so much as good business acumen, I think. So, from the airline perspective, it's either a resourcing or a strategy issue. I am going to hold like sort of a little community powwow around this, where I can show the results of the diversion study and talk a bit about trends over the last 10 years. Maybe we put our heads together and see what other angles might be exploited. But trust me when I say we've gone at it from all angles. And remember, airlines make decisions around 2 windows. There's the fall-winter schedule, and then there's the spring-summer, and they're done at 6-month leads. So there's only so much different stuff you can do with the same primary decision makers to work on this, right? But I don't think we've been shy with resourcing or time or effort for sure.
Can I piggyback off of that?
Sure.
I like what he was saying, and I guess one thing would be is to understand, do the airport actually take their time, have a project or something where we have to show them in order to be able to kind of support having more traffic coming through the airport?
Right.
So how do we factually provide them with the data that shows, for instance, like, around how many people that are coming in that's not necessarily from the region, but they actually visit Central and will
Right.
probably come in here? Do we actually track them so that we can show them that, we would be able to facilitate another aircraft, for instance, and
Yes.
sustain it because of?
Yeah. So demonstrating demand is all data driven,
Yeah.
and the good airlines are very sophisticated about that. They understand how a market gets stimulated by new service. They understand what you could recapture with incremental service. But it's interesting you said visitors, because I said it's just shy of 60% of people going out, but it worsens a lot when it comes to visitors coming back. So those numbers are closer to 40%. So 40% of people who live abroad that are coming to Gander for some reason are using your airport. So that's 60 that aren't.
Yeah.
So that's you're less than half at this point. That's a problem. And I tell you, just using personal anecdotes over Christmas, you'd be shocked to know I do have friends, and I look at, if I have 20 friends who are bringing home, who are traveling for Christmas, or who are bringing kids home who might be at school or away for work, it's almost none of them. It's almost none of them using the airport that time of year around Christmas. One peak demand on a single flight, there's no room. Maybe 1 of 10. It's just, that's worse too. And I can tell you, because people are always in my ear about air service and their travel plans, and they do it to me sometimes a little bit apologetically, but they're just stating the fact, like, couldn't get them in. So here we are. Thanks, Holly. Good question. Anyone else? Go ahead.
The current status of the live cargo facility, or when is it due to be completed?
I would say you were looking at it being operative, I'm going to say September on the safe side. It could be August. We're still ready to lock and load in terms of any flights that might happen this spring, because we have contingencies. But I would say that's a safe bet where we're to now. So, yeah. Anyone else? Nope. All right, Madam Chair, thanks.
Thanks very much, Rich. And before we do finally screw up, I want to acknowledge Zane Tucker. Zane, I did see you come in. I spoke to you, and then I forgot to mention you when I mentioned all of our other board members. So Zane's up there as well. I want to thank you all for coming, and we really appreciate the partnership that results from your being here and having the conversations with us. It's so important always that we communicate, that we have the to and fro, and we welcome that at any time. And you can do that through your board members that you know, and they're listed in here in any case, and in manners like this. So thank you so much for coming. It means a lot.